Thank you for staying with us. Now let's talk food security. Agriculture as an indigenous occupation in Nigeria has gone through various phases of development
and evolution.
This spans 3 phases from pre-colonial to post-colonial and then development. According to the Central Bank of Nigeria in 2016, the sector in the 1960s contributed 85% of the Nigeria foreign exchange earnings, 90% employment generation, and about 80% to gross domestic product. Available data also confirms that at independence in 1960, the contribution of agriculture to the GDP was about 60%, which is typical of developing agrarian nations. Now let's have a chat with the Lagos State Commissioner for Agriculture and Food Systems, Abisola Olusoya, who joins us via Zoom. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to have you with us. Well,
thank you.
There you are. I can see you now.
Yes.
Now, Lagos is I'm not talking about land mass now, I'm talking about population. Lagos is a big state, and there's a challenge of feeding the 20-odd million of us who form the population of Lagos State. So how is the state dealing with that particular challenge of food production and supply?
Thank you once again for the opportunity to be on the show this morning. 20 million odd people, as you said, it's not an easy feat. And as a state, we understand our role in the value chain of food. Considering the geographical location, the demography, and the context in which Lagos finds itself, production as a whole would be just about 20%, whereas the remaining 80% of the food needs of the state will be coming from outside of the state and from imports from foreign countries. The key to all of this and the harmonizer to all of this effort in terms of getting the food to the people's homes and to people's plates is in the reorganization of markets, which the Lagos State Governor, Mr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu, is pioneering. This heavy dependence on states, it is not something that can be erased. It's just like what you find in even countries such as Singapore that have a similar geographical limitation as well as human population mix. But where we find ourselves, like I said, we understand our place in the chain, and our place is largely in markets. It doesn't negate the fact that we must still continue to push for increase in production. You can have a very low land mass, but at the same time have very high yields. So investment in R&D, investment in ensuring that in places where you can even grow, you put in the technologies required for increased yields is paramount, and we are on this journey. Historically, also as a state, our focus is largely on livestock production as opposed to crops. So you'll find value chains such as poultry and fish and piggery as the key agricultural production value chains for the state. So you have a heavy concentration of poultry farmers here, as well as aquaculture and fisheries and pig farmers. And you will see that in terms of the skewness of production, it is actually tailored more to this. But in recent times also, we are seeing an increase in uptake of those in vegetable production and crop production. So you have certain axes within the states where you have quite a clustering formation and a density of vegetable farmers. And we are continuously trying to also ensure that more people come into this frame, since we are also heavily dependent on other states for crops, because we always have this mindset of we don't have enough land for cultivation. But the truth is we do have land. It's just that we are not maximally utilizing those lands, and we're trying to encourage more private sector people to come into the space now to ensure that at least we can optimally utilize while still seeking for partnerships with other states to ensure that we're able to meet production needs.
You mentioned that your attention is more on livestock than on crops. Yes. But there's the challenge of the cost of feed.
Yes.
How are you dealing with that?
Yes. So, like I said, historically, the concentration has been on livestock. Feed has actually taken a huge knockout of a lot of poultry farmers and aquaculture farmers. Part of what we try to do from time to time, particularly when we also receive support from the federal government, and I think the federal government has been supportive in the last couple of years, releasing grains and what have you. We do push this and pass this on to our farmers, as well as in trying to ensure that they have ease to market, access to market, trying to ensure that in terms of helping with offtake of their products also, to ensure a proper recycling of funds also does happen. So we do linkages as well for offtake. For poultry farmers, for example, they have seasons where gluts happen, where they have abundance, but then demand is actually low. This would usually happen when children are on holidays and you have poultry farmers with excess eggs. We try to help with linkages to help to offtake so that they still have revenue. Yes, they do have excess eggs, where at times you see that they have to bury the eggs because there's no demand and the eggs are getting rotten and getting spoiled.
Pause, madam. Pause.
Yes.
Excess, did I hear excess eggs? I mean, yes. Too many eggs?
Excess. Yes, I'm sure if you go back, you can check online. There's a season of glut that does happen where farmers have to bury eggs. You can just check on Google.
Give us an idea of when that is so we'll pay attention.
I said when children are usually off school. So that would happen roughly, usually around March, April. It takes place around the Easter period. That happens almost on an annual basis.
Wow.
Is it because, I'm just trying to understand. I know that there's a lot to talk about, but could it be a function of cost as well?
Not necessarily. Okay, so why I mentioned the egg glut and part of what we are doing now, in as much as the question started with feed and feed cost, I was just trying to arrive at a destination as to what is the totality of, let's say, poultry production and some of the things that we try to do as a state to help around. Now, it comes as a function of demand and supply dynamics. You have seasons where schools are on a break. There is supply of eggs in abundance, and that is also coming on the cyclical nature of egg production. So you have the season maybe during Christmas where farmers would, just prior to Christmas, where farmers will buy layer birds. The layer birds, after they have been fed for a while and all of that, egg production obviously increases, and that obviously takes place along, a couple of weeks, a couple of months. You still have eggs coming in abundance. There is a peak period when these layer birds would produce a massive quantity of eggs, but because schools are also off, and a lot of schools do offtake quite a number of eggs from farmers. And when the schools are down and they shut down, the farmers don't have the market to be able to push these eggs to. What usually does happen at that point in time is farmers have to bury some of these eggs because they don't have places where they can push these eggs to. In some cases also, it could happen as a function of price, but really it's not a pricing issue, because when you consider it as well, a farmer would rather sell at a loss than bury the eggs and make nothing completely out of it. Yeah. So what I'm saying is this is a cyclical thing that happens year on year, which is why we have a lot of farmer groups also advocating for egg powder, meaning equipment and machinery that can convert eggs to powder form or to some sort of milk form that can be used, in seasons where you don't have enough eggs. So if you were to be in a country abroad, for instance, you'll see that they sell eggs in cartons, almost like a juice carton, where you can just take that and just put it in your frying pan and fry. Yeah. These are some of the things that people have been advocating for in Nigeria, that we need to find a way to change and add value to eggs so that we can preserve them for longer.
It sounds like we should be expecting egg shakes now that we have, milkshakes. But I also like the fact that you were able to identify where we are in the food chain in Lagos. We are the ones that consume the food. And that's, it's an enviable place to be. Talk us through the 5-year agricultural and food systems roadmap that you launched in 2021. It's about 3 years gone now.
Yes, for the 5-year agricultural and food systems roadmap, it is hinged on the 3 areas in any value chain: upstream, midstream, downstream, and the various initiatives and interventions that we as a state government would be making in each and every one of them. But all of this is encapsulated in a handshake with the private sector. Looking at where we are today, agricultural-wise, as a nation, as a state, the private sector is still the harbinger of all of the efforts of the state governments. There's only so much the state government can do. And if private sector involvement is not heavy enough, it is unsustainable. So the roadmap is hinged largely on this. With current updates to the roadmap, we have essentially 4 pillars, and the pillars would be domestic self-sufficiency, up-country partnerships, development of infrastructure around storage, processing, and logistics, and the 4th would be the market transformation. For us as a state, like I said earlier, we also recognize our role, we recognize our place, and like you rightly mentioned as well, we are the largest consuming state in the nation. For this reason, our destination as a market plays and hinges largely on how we can also shape the entire ecosystem to not only suit our own needs, but to help all the way back to upstream, which is why market retransformation is a key role that we are taking up. Now, we focus heavily on production in Nigeria as a whole. A lot of interventions, a lot of support, be it from states and from federal government, is largely tailored towards production. But what we fail to take cognizance of is the chain and how this food from production moves all up until you get it to the market. What you have is farmers are producing at relatively okay costs, but these farmers still end up in high poverty levels, and we need to question why that is happening. It is because the farmers are making the least margins and yet putting in the most effort around production. You have middlemen who end up taking more margins, making more money at the expense of the farmer, at the expense of the consumer, and at the end of the day, the consumer loses because he or she is paying a higher cost, and the farmer also loses because he has no way to get this food to market. In as much as the middlemen are playing a key role, the bottom line still remains that the inconsistencies we have from the point of production to market, and largely the gaps that are in the system due to poor infrastructure, poor logistics, and unorganized market, is playing largely on why we end up paying a huge price for foods in our markets. Reorganizing the markets and understanding how food is coming in, where the food is coming from, the price at production point, the logistics embedded in the cost, how it is getting to your market, the standardization of it, the additional value add to it, and the final price you pay. It's important for everyone to know so that you begin to understand the value that you're truly paying for it. Also, it helps to reduce post-harvest losses, which is a key factor in why we pay such a huge price for food. Imagine that almost 50% of the food produced somewhere, by the time it's getting into your market, about half of it is already spoiled. Remember, you still pay the price for 100% of the food items, even though only 50% of it is wholesome. So these are some of the things that we have recognized, and we understand our role in the entire chain. And we feel that if we can organize the end point, then taking it all the way back to the upstream, you'll start to see the needed changes, particularly around food pricing, standardization, and every other thing that would, ensure you have precision around production.
Well, it leads to the question that's been on my mind. I was just waiting, and it seems like you preempted that I was going to ask that question. Food is expensive. Yes. And as far as the market person, the people watching you right now and listening to you, as far as they are concerned, food is expensive. Yes. A crate of eggs was way less than 1,000 naira how many years ago? Now it's circa 5,000 naira plus or minus in a number of places. And that even depends on the shop that you bought it. If you
Yes.
bought where there is air conditioning, you will be charged for the air conditioning on your eggs. So so that's just one example. And then of course you talk about yam, talk about tomatoes, quicker perishable ones, beef, even vegetables.
Fish.
All these things are expensive. So, and I know that is perhaps the reason that Lagos State government came up with this, food discount market.
Yes.
How has that played out so far? It would seem like not everyone is aware of that market, and I know you have a second one out right now. Talk to us about what necessitated that, and how do we bring down the cost of food in Lagos?
Okay, you're very right. The cost of food has been very high. Considering even when we did Onjeko phase 1, that was back in, we started sometime in March. And compared to now, we've seen that prices of food in some cases have actually doubled. This was part of one of the initiatives that Mr. Babajide Olusola Sanwo-Olu felt we needed to push to the fore to help, palliate, all of the inflationary dynamics, around food. We kicked off phase 1, like I said, in March. We ran phase 1 for about 6 weeks across Lagos, but in some other locations, we actually ran it for close to 3-4 months. And then with the kickoff of phase 2, which we started off on 1st of September, the idea around that, being a continuation of what we did in phase 1, was to still continue to support Lagosians, around the pricing of food, and not just support Lagosians in terms of consumption, but even our farmers, those that are into production, to continuously also give them the avenue to be able to bring foods, sometimes directly into some of these locations where we are holding the Onjeko. Now, when you say Lagosians or people don't know about the Onjeko, people do know about it. It is run across all of the local governments and LCDAs in the state. This time around also, we have included academic tertiary institutions into the fray. Civil servants are also being served, and we will continue to expand as we see the need for it. But remember also that we have a constraint around the quantity we can sell on any given market day. So in terms of the popularization of the initiative, we also need to be careful not to create an over demand, whereas supply is constrained. That would definitely create chaos. So we work with the various local governments, we work with their officials, we work with the CDC, CDAs also to help to inform more people. We have billboards, we have radio jingles that we have put out there for people to also get to know about the initiative, as well as our social media handles, which is the _Eco Lagos, for more people to also be abreast of the information. We have news channels like yours, also helping to spread the news around the initiative. But like I said, we also need to find a balance between not creating over demand for a constrained supply. Anyone coming into any one of these locations that we continuously put out there every week can only buy a certain quantity of food item any given market day. You can't buy more than 5 kilos of rice. You can't buy more than 5 kilos of beans or 5 kilos of gari. You can't buy more than 2 crates of eggs. You can't buy more than 2 kilos of tomato, 1 kilo of onions, 1 kilo of tatashe and rodo, and 2 loaves of bread. So because we are also working with local vendors, we need to understand that these are MSMEs. These are micro, small businesses that have also a limited capacity. We don't want to inundate and push a lot of pressure on vendors, whereas they start to also mop up from other vendors, and before you know it, the ability to reconcile accounts, the ability to reconcile quantities also becomes a problem. Also, the main players in this whole system are still largely civil servants, public servants, whose line of business normally would be more of bureaucratic paperwork. And now bringing this same set of people into markets and conducting physical transactions, it's not an easy evolution of role. So that also will continuously take practice. It will continuously take trainings, and with each passing day, the people keep getting better. So we still hope to make this something that with time, if the private sector would like to join in and we find a middle ground, we can actually work this out in such a way that it becomes a sustainable effort around ensuring that food prices keep coming down. But what we saw also for phase one, the more we ran on Jericho, we noticed that prices of food actually started to come down because people were now largely waiting for the Sunday market to buy their foods as opposed to going to the regular market. The idea is not for us to distort market dynamics or market pricing, but to ensure that those who are capitalizing and taking advantage of people start to feel the effect and start to bring down the pricing of food.
If you can, my apologies, if you can quickly address that.
Yes.
It would seem like some people are just exploiting.
Yes,
which is one of the issues that the FCCPC was trying to take some people up on.
Yes.
Price gouging. Is there anything the Lagos State government can do about that? I know that some communities, some market leaders had gone around to say, look, your prices are too expensive, bring them down. Is this something that the government wants to systemize, or is this just something that's just going to, I don't know, talk to us about that.
The thing is, you cannot gag people with a gag order and say, bring down your pricing. At the end of the day, it's still a market. You still want a free market to persist, but you have to do it in a way that it is more fundamental. And the fundamentality of all of this is, how do you push production in such a way that the food is getting to consumers with less middlemen, and they still have accessibility to consumers in such a way that the price point offering can be passed on directly to the consumer with less interjection of this middleman. That's the only way prices can come down. Just announcing and saying, bring your prices down, will not do anything. Now, I am not diminishing the role of the middleman in getting the food to your market. It's just that we've seen time and time again that middlemen tend to place a large sum on some of this food that are being produced in other localities. And, the effect on that for you and I is that we pay a higher price premium for it. What we have seen, and which is part of what we have domesticated, and the example I'll always prefer would be the Lagos State Fresh Food Hub at Mushin Dioro. This is a market space. Farmers do sell there. Regular market men and women do sell there. But because you have a mix of farmers and you have a mix of farmers and middlemen, the farmers can largely help to tailor their prices in such a way that the person who is just an ordinary buyer and or an ordinary trader would have to fall in line within the price point at which the farmer is selling to keep the prices largely down. Across Lagos State in the last 4-5 months, prices of eggs have been the lowest at the Fresh Food Hub, and that is because you have direct production from farmers in terms of the eggs coming into the food hub, and they had been able to sustain it. So at a point in time when people were selling eggs for 5,000, 5,500, 6,000 at the Fresh Food Hub, it stayed consistently for about 4,000 to 4,300. Up until now, where it is now largely around 4,007 or 4,006. But the point I'm trying to pass across is, when you have organized markets, when you have organized infrastructure, where farmers feel the confidence to be able to bring food into a space and sell directly to consumers, it does help in reducing the price arbitrage that middlemen put on it, thereby passing on the gains to consumers. This is what we need to happen more, for prices to be regularized and to come down. That way, you will be solving the problem systematically, fundamentally, and much more importantly, sustainably.
Okay. Farming is no longer a job for old people like it was. So a lot of young people are taking advantage of the fact that 200 million people have to be fed. There are approximately 200 million of us in this country, and we all need to eat. So how is Lagos State taking advantage of this fact and helping young people make a go of being farmers, whatever kind of farming that they choose to go into?
Okay, so one of our sub pillars under domestic self sufficiency will be capacity building. This is where we have youth tailored programs for such. We have the Lagos Agripreneurship Program, which has had its few kinks in the past. We keep working at it to get it better. But what this training essentially is about is to train young people between the ages of 18 and 35. We house them for about a month at our facilities at Badagry and in Ekwe. And after that, they undergo a 3-month internship with established agricultural businesses, farms, and what have you. And the idea around that is that at the end of this program, those that perform very well, we offer some sort of empowerment, but which does not run concurrently with the lab program. And that is an error we have identified that we are now trying to make adjustments to ensure that every training program we have for the youth now, encapsulated within the program, will be the empowerment. But to take us back to the essence of it, we have had successes of young people now doing well in their various enterprises, some of them still utilizing our facilities where we use as incubation centers. But more importantly, partnerships with private sector also does go a long way. We have quite a couple of consultancy firms in the agricultural space where we continue to push young people towards. And then we have collaborations also with multilateral and bilateral agencies around training and empowerment. For instance, I know that the British American Tobacco Nigerian Foundation, they partner with us to train youth and women. And every year there's some sort of empowerment giving. There's also collaboration with IIT and MasterCard Foundation around that. Also, even as a state government and not just domiciled in the Ministry of Agriculture and Food Systems alone, we have training that does happen in agriculture. Even in the office of the First Lady, we also have that ongoing in the Ministry of Women Affairs and Poverty Alleviation. I know that Ministry of Commerce, Cooperatives, Trades and Investments, they also try to tailor some things, particularly within the agricultural space. And for Ministry of Wealth Creation, where we have the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, which does give out grants and loans to small agribusinesses, and particularly for young people. They have tailored interventions around granting of funding. So all of this, when you put it together holistically, you see that the Lagos State government keeps striving to ensure that when it comes to youth inclusion in agriculture, we work together, we band together and try as much as possible to push as many people into this field. More importantly is to also address the need, but right from a younger age, not when people are out of school and probably seeking for jobs and looking for what to do, then they see agriculture as the fallback sector. We are trying to change that narrative now, which is why we have the Lagos Agric Scholars Program. This is an initiative for secondary schools where we build school farms. And we used to do this historically, and we used to call it the School Agric Program, SAP. But it sounded like Structural Adjustment Program of the past. So we felt that was not applicable. It was not applicable to what we have now. So we changed it to the Lagos Agric Scholars Program. We also changed the modality around it. How do you entice very young kids to come into the space where everybody wants to be an entertainer, a footballer, a doctor, a lawyer, because they see it as more prestigious, is because we also do not have enough showcase of successful people in the agricultural space. And we felt that that needed to change. So with the
I beg your pardon, Commissioner.
Yes.
We've almost completely run out of time, but I want you to talk about red meat, because meat is extremely expensive and it's extremely important for good health. In 1 minute, tell us about that program and how you intend to bring meat to the homes of people.
Okay, so Lagos, on a daily basis, we will slaughter over 6,000 heads of cattle. That is a very large number. We are the largest consuming state for red meat in Nigeria. We do not produce, we produce very minimally. In fact, what we do rather is more fattening. And we just felt that we needed to change that narrative as the most consuming state. So we have the Lagos State Feedlot. It's an ongoing project at Igbodu in Ekwe, where we'll be having about a 750 hectare feedlots where cattle can be brought in from different parts of the country, and they can be fattened for quite a length of time before processing does happen. But before this program eventually does kick off, in the same breath, we are working around adjusting how the butchers, how they slaughter, how the process meat, how they market meat to you and I in a way that it is under hygienic conditions. So we have the Lagos State Butchers Academy program where we are training young people to take up the artisanal part of butchery and to see it as something prestigious enough, and also educating farmers and educating the marketmen around how they can take care of cattle in a better way, as well as process it, that means the slaughtering, in under hygienic conditions. We've also partnered with several private sector players around the logistics of red meat carcass. So you have cold chain trucks around Lagos. We used to have the Eco Meat van, that is still there, but we now have more private sector players coming in and investing in cold chain trucks for the movement of carcass around. We do regular enforcement from time to time, but we also adjust to realities in terms of inflationary pressures, and also try to rather do more sensitization and more or less plead, with those playing within this field to desist from slaughtering in unapproved abattoir spaces or unapproved slaughter slabs, as well as the movement of meat in unhygienic ways.
Mrs. Olusoya, we just have to bring you back because there's still so much for us to talk about. Because food is life. Let's face it. So we need to bring you back to tell us more about all this that's going on. And I want to ask you one quick question. Are you fitting in area boys into all these programs that you're doing so you can get them off the streets?
The truth of the matter is, I don't think when we use the word area boy, I think we're just largely speaking to people who probably feel that there's nothing going on for them and they have to resort to certain mechanisms around how to make money. But our processes and our systems, our programs are all encapsulating. We don't put caveats, we don't put excessive criteria. So long as you're a Lagos resident, you're within a certain age bracket, we try to include as many people as possible in our programs.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Mrs. Abisola Olusoya, Commissioner for Agriculture and Food Systems, Lagos State. Thank you very much for coming to enlighten us today, even though you have to come back because the conversation is not over yet.
It's just starting, actually.
Thank you for joining us today.
6,000 cows. 6,000 cows in one city. The governor, a Lagos State governor, said once that we spend about 6 or 60 billion naira every day in Lagos on food alone. How much is mine in that?
25 million people and counting.
Okay.
Sunrise will be right back with another interesting conversation. Do join us.